His shift started at midnight when the rush hour ended and the trains slowed from packed to crowded. He rode the last one uptown, past the flickering lights of stalled buses and bodegas, past graffiti-tagged fire escapes and window-sized holes in the brick walls. On Line 9, all the way north, the tunnels got narrower, the stations less used, the trains less frequent. By the time he reached 137th, he was the only passenger. That's when the sound started, a scratching noise coming from the floor. At first, he thought it was just mice, the kind that nest in the grimy stations, darting between straffhongers and leaping over turnstiles, unafraid of humans. But this sound was different. It was slow, deliberate, metallic. It scraped and scratched like claws on metal. He looked round. No one was there. He continued walking. Then the lights flickered. The emergency lights flickered. And then they went out, plunging the station into darkness so thick you could taste it. His flashlight cut through it, revealing the vast, empty platform, the tracks, the dark hole where the tunnel met the wall. And then he heard it again, closer now, something heavy dragging itself closer. Whatever it was, it smelled like dirt and decay and something impossibly old. His flashlight flickered again. He could have sworn he saw movement in the corner of his eye, a shape coalescing in the darkness, a presence. He shone his light toward it, nothing but shadows. The sound stopped. He called out into the darkness, his voice echoing away. No answer, just the pounding of his own heart. He stood there, listening, waiting. Nothing happened. He tried to tell himself it was just an old, broken grate, a loose rail, anything but what he was afraid it was. When the train arrived, he got on, burying his face in the crook of his arm until it reached the next stop. He got out, walked slowly toward the sound, and then he saw it. Embedded in the wall of the tunnel was a long, narrow opening, almost like a keyhole, but that was impossible. This was a subway, not some haunted house. Still, the sound seemed to be coming from inside, and whatever was making it didn't seem to be afraid of him. So he did the bravest thing he could. He shined his flashlight into the hole and peered inside. What he saw made him drop the flashlight and stumble back. There, in the darkness, silhouetted against a faint, sickly glow, was a shape. Something hunched, something skeletal, something that shouldn't have been there. Something that stirred, as if sensing his gaze. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. His throat was dry, his heart a drum in his chest. Then the shape moved again, and he saw that it wasn't a shape at all. It was a person, or rather, something wearing a person's skin. It was emaciated, impossibly thin, with fingers like splinters and eyes that glowed an unnatural green. And as he watched, paralyzed with fear, it slithered out of the wall and onto the tracks. It turned its head, seeming to regard him with an intelligence that sent a chill down his spine. And then it vanished into the darkness. He screamed then, a primal, wordless sound that echoed through the tunnels. He ran, stumbling blindly, desperate to escape whatever he had seen. The image burned into his mind, the glowing eyes, the skeletal frame, the unnatural movements. He knew he wasn't dreaming. He knew he had seen something that belonged in nightmares, not the grimy tunnels beneath New York City. The deeper he went into the tunnel, the quieter everything became. The sounds of the city faded, cars, wind, distant chatter until there was nothing. Just the hum of his boots on steel and the distant drip of water hitting stone. About 30 minutes in, the radio went dead. He tapped it. No signal, no static, just silence. Then he heard it. Not behind him, not ahead, below. Something breathing. Not human breathing. Not rhythmic or calm. It was wet, guttural, like something trying to remember how lungs work. He froze, bent down, put his ear to the cold steel of the tunnel floor. It was faint, but it was there. A wheezing inhale, a long, tremoring exhale. Something was under the tracks. He stood, heart pounding, and turned to leave, but that's when his flashlight flickered. Just for a second, but in that second, he saw them. A pile of clothes, shirts, shoes, socks, even a hard hat roll, scattered in a neat heap, like someone had just stepped out of their skin. No blood, no body, just clothes, still warm to the touch. Marcus called out, "Hello, anyone there?" No answer, but the breathing stopped. That was somehow worse. And then, just at the edge of the tunnel light, something moved, not walked, not ran, slithered. Marcus backed away, his breath short, his pulse crashing in his ears. Whatever it was, it didn't chase him. It just watched from behind the veil of darkness, crouched and silent like it was learning him, tasting him with its stare. He left the tunnel that night, but something left with him. 2 days later, Marcus called in sick. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, waiting for him. As the hours crawled by, his anxiety grew. He paced his apartment, hands shaking, trying to convince himself it was just stress. He'd been working too hard, pushing himself too far. This job was a grind. Every day the same. Check gauges, clear debris, tighten bolts, repeat. It was mindless, lonely work, and the pay was terrible. He thought about quitting, going back to Chicago, back to her. He missed her every day. Sometimes he dreamed she visited him, only to wake up and find the sheets cold and empty beside him. They were so close once. He could tell her everything. Now all he had was the echo of her laughter and the phantom scent of her perfume clinging to his pillow. A knock on the door made him jump. Was it the landlord, the neighbor he'd argued with last week? What if they sent someone to check up on him? Someone from work. He pressed his back against the wall, listening. Another knock, louder this time. He crept closer to the peephole and peered out. No one was there. Maybe it was just his imagination. He was seeing things now, breathing heavily. He unlocked the door and stepped out into the hall. The knocking had come from inside his apartment. He knew that sound. He recognized that rhythm. He swallowed, his throat dry, and slowly opened the door. It creaked on its hinges. He could have sworn it was unlocked last night. Fumbling with the knob, he finally pushed it open wider. Inside, in the flickering light of the hallway lamp, he saw it. A single black leather glove lay on the floor where his shoe had been. He screamed and slammed the door, his back hitting the wood as he slid down to the floor. He was trapped in an apartment with no windows, no phone, no way out, and whatever had been stalking him had found its way inside. He locked himself in the bathroom, but when he turned on the tap, the water turned black. Panic clawed at his throat. He banged on the door, but it was no use. The glove was a warning, a promise of what was to come, a reminder that he wasn't alone. In the suffocating darkness, he waited, listened, held his breath as the scratching at the door grew louder, more insistent. He could hear it now, wet, guttural breathing just on the other side of the thin wooden barrier. Something was out there with him. Something that wanted in. Something that wouldn't stop until it got what it wanted. Then the scratching stopped. Silence descended, heavy and thick like a shroud. He heard a low growl, a rumble in the darkness that sent shivers down his spine. Whatever was out there was getting closer. He could feel its presence in the room with him. A tangible thing, cold and damp like a grave. Slowly, ever so slowly, the growling grew louder, more insistent. It was coming for him. He could run, hide, barricade himself in here forever. But he knew that wouldn't help. It would only delay the inevitable. So he did the only thing he could. He turned off the tap, closed his eyes, and waited for the darkness to swallow him whole. The whispers started the second day. He was running line 9 again. The same route, the same speed. But now there were sounds following him through the tunnels. At first, he thought it was just the wind. The ventilation system for the subway is tied into the city's heating and cooling. So when the wind hits the grates above, it makes whistling sounds down here. But these weren't whistling sounds. They were whispering. Too many voices, all speaking at once. He tried to ignore them. He put on his headphones, blasted music, pretended he was running from a different kind of monster, the ones that lived above ground. But then the footsteps started, heavy, slow, measured, coming from far ahead. He picked up his pace. He told himself it was just a late-night maintenance worker. There weren't supposed to be any workers down here, and there was something in those footsteps that unsettled him, like dread or hunger. On the intercom, a voice crackled to life. Marcus tensed. That wasn't the wind. That was definitely a voice, and it sounded close. "Hello, is anyone there?" The voice repeated the question. Closer. "What's your name?" Marcus kept running. He knew what the voice wanted. It always wants your name. If you tell it, it takes you. He didn't dare look back, but he slowed, trying to steady his breathing, pretending he hadn't heard anything at all. "Hello," the voice said, and then it stopped. Whatever was down there had found something else to hunt. He finished his shift as quickly as he could, scrubbing at his face in the bathroom, willing himself to calm down. He needed sleep, but sleep meant dreams, and the dreams were always the worst. They never remembered his name, but they knew his face. They whispered it in their sleep, over and over, until he woke up screaming. It was the third night when Marcus returned to Line 9 alone. Not to work, to investigate. He brought his own flashlight this time. One with industrial batteries that wouldn't die in the middle of whatever this was, and a body cam he'd used on a side gig. If something was down there, he was going to record it. He followed the tunnel back to the pile of clothes. They were gone, replaced by a long smear of something across the floor. Not blood, not oil. Something black, thick, like old tar, smelling of rust, rot, and something sweet like spoiled fruit. He followed it, deeper, past the sealed gates marked "Do Not Enter," past the flickering lights and onto tracks so old they were no longer listed on the city maps. This was the old line abandoned after a fire in 1982. They said it collapsed, but that's not why it was closed. The tunnel changed here. It wasn't just old, it was wrong. The concrete was cracked in patterns that looked too deliberate, like veins, like scars. Strange glyphs were etched into the walls, looping spirals and open eyes carved by hands long gone. Then he found the door, a massive iron hatch sunken into the wall like a vault. No handle, no code, just one word carved across it in jagged letters. Somnia, Latin, sleep. He pressed his ear to the door, breathing louder now, more than one this time. He stepped back, and the door shuddered. Something behind it had heard him. The air grew thick, electric, like the moment before a lightning strike. His light dimmed then. The sound, click. The latch moved on its own. He turned and ran, faster than he'd ever run in his life. Down the tunnel, around the bend, up the ladder, back into the known world. Him burst into the city like he'd been underwater. The sun was rising. People were walking, talking, laughing. But all Marcus could hear was the breathing, still in his ears, in his bones. Something had awakened, and it had seen him. He got home, showered 3 times, scrubbed his hands until they bled, burned his work clothes, told himself none of it was real, that he was tired, overworked, dehydrated. But he couldn't explain the smell that lingered on his skin, or the black fluid he'd stepped in, now staining the soles of his boots even after he threw them away. He started losing time, waking up in places he didn't remember walking to, finding dirt under his fingernails. A chill wind buffeted him, whipping his hair across his face. As he turned toward the sound, he saw it, a figure standing on the edge of the woods, tall and thin. It looked like a man, but it moved like a spider. He couldn't see its face. Its head was obscured by the darkness. But as it turned, he caught a glimpse of its eyes. Black. 2 pinpricks of absolute black in the gloom. But there was something else there, too. Something moving behind those eyes. Like there was something alive trying to claw its way out. He blinked. The figure was gone. Just a trick of the shadows, he told himself. But then he heard it again. A soft, scraping sound, and then a voice, barely audible, but it was speaking. Not in English. In some ancient, unknown tongue, it sang. Sang of caves and earth and things best left undisturbed. He froze. That voice. he knew it. He'd heard it before, beneath the city. Within the whispers, it was one of the voices. This time, though, it wasn't coming from below. It was coming from above, as if something was clawing its way up from the ground itself to answer the call. He broke into a run, didn't stop until he reached the road and the comforting glow of the streetlights. It was only then he realized what he'd seen, what he'd felt. Fear. It had been fear itself. Something stirred in the darkness beneath the city, something vast and hungry, and it was reaching for him. It wanted him to come back. He pushed the memory away, focusing instead on the road ahead. There was nothing there, nothing but trees, a twisted, gnarled mess of branches against the darkening sky. But every so often, he'd catch a glimpse of something moving in the shadows, something just beyond his vision, always watching, always waiting. When he finally reached his car, his hands were shaking. He fumbled with his keys, but eventually got them in the door. He slammed it shut behind him and locked it. Then he started the engine and pulled onto the road. But he didn't drive away from the woods. He drove toward them, straight toward the dark heart of the forest, deeper into the whispering darkness, where the roots of the world are bare and the hunger of the earth is laid open and raw. He drove until the trees thinned, and he could see the buildings of the research facility looming up in front of him. He didn't slow down. He just kept going straight, crashing through the gates as if compelled by some unseen force. As he did, a single thought echoed in his mind. He had to get back down there, back to the tunnels, back to the place where his nightmares were born, back to the voice that called to him in the darkness, back to the whispers that promised him an end to the torment in his mind. He parked the car haphazardly and ran toward the familiar opening in the fence. He didn't bother checking if anyone was around. No one would stop him now, not even himself. It's been a week since I got back from New York. I barely slept on the flight over. My head was pounding. I was sure I had COVID. And then I started seeing things. Faces in the clouds, shadows by the windows, figures standing over the seats. And as we approached JFK, I felt it. A heavy presence in the cabin, like someone or something was getting off at my stop. New York City. It's where our story starts. A month ago, an actor named Marcus was heading home. He worked as a bartender and subway token booth collector. Not exactly what he went to school for, but it paid the bills. On his way home, he took the subway, Line 9. He rode it every day, up and down Broadway, past Times Square, through the heart of the city that never sleeps. That night, Marcus felt tired. Maybe it was the garlic bread he had for lunch, or the fact he hadn't slept more than 4 hours in a week. He just wanted to go home. But when he got off at his stop, he hesitated. Should he walk home, call an Uber? Maybe he should go to the bar, have one drink, just one, and then call it a night. But no, that's not what he did, because that night, something called to him. Whatever it was, it touched him, and soon he wouldn't have a choice, because whatever he touched that night in the dark, it touched him back. And now we get to see the city through Marcus's eyes, a labyrinth of tunnels under a city that never sleeps, the purring of engines, The screeching of metal on metal, the distant hum of generators. The air grows stale, colder, thicker, and as the last train rattles overhead, Marcus sees them. Figures coalescing out of the darkness, limbs stretching, eyes opening. The next morning, Marcus didn't show up for work. His apartment was left unlocked. His phone was still charging, the fridge full, his ID and wallet untouched. But the only thing missing was him. That same week, 3 more subway workers vanished, each assigned to Line 9. The city didn't report it. No news stories, no alerts, but quietly, trains on Line 9 resumed service. Only during off hours between 1 o'clock and 4 a.m. If you ask the right person at the right time, they'll tell you those trains don't come back. And the cameras, they go dark the moment the doors close. Some say Marcus is still alive, changed, infected, living underground with the others. But there's another version, one that says Marcus never made it out that last night, that the person who showed up at work the next morning wasn't him anymore. It was wearing his face, his skin, but inside it was something else, something ancient, something patient. The sleepers, they've been waiting, watching, breeding beneath the surface of cities we thought we knew. And now they're waking up, one body at a time. You've probably seen them. People who look normal, but feel off. Too quiet, too calm. Their eyes never blinking. Bare movements just a second too slow. You brush past them on the subway, on the escalator, in a dark hallway. You tell yourself it's nothing, but deep down you know something's wrong. You just don't want to believe it, just like Marcus didn't. If you think this story is scary, wait till I tell you the real one. When I arrived in New York, I got COVID. I spent a week locked in my hotel room watching reruns of Law and Order. On the 3rd day, I started hearing voices outside my door, whispering, murmuring. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like they were trying to get in. I told myself it was the building settling, but then I started hearing footsteps. Someone pacing back and forth on the other side of the door. Heavy footsteps. I told myself it was the neighbor moving in. But then I started smelling it. A coppery, metallic scent like blood. I told myself it was the guy across the hall grilling chicken. But after the 3rd night, I wasn't so sure. Because if you listen closely, you can hear it. The scratching, the tapping, the insistent, unnatural sound of something trying to claw its way through the wood. Die. And if you hear it, then it's too late. Because whatever's on the other side has already gotten in. I don't know how long I was locked in that room. I don't know how I got there. All I know is that when they finally let me out, I wasn't the same ever again. I don't remember saying yes to the garlic bread. But here's the thing, this story, it's not fiction. It's a warning. Because the voice you've been listening to, it's not mine anymore. It's his, it's theirs. And if you've heard it this far, you've already been marked. So here's my advice. Don't ride the last train. Don't follow the noise. Don't go underground. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep.